they're focusing on the southeast, refocusing on the southeast because they failed in all of their other objectives. Remember, this war began as a war to remove the Ukrainian government and eliminate Ukraine as an independent state from the map of Europe. That was clearly Putin's intention. He more or less said that. It's what he wrote in his famous article of a year ago. That failed miserably. And so the Russians are now back to a very small part of their original requirement, which is to deepen their existing presence in the Donbass.
And we've seen messages from the Russian military that they would be withdrawing from some of the fronts, for example, around Kyiv, and then reports on the ground seem to contradict this. What do you think this means for Russia's tactics?
The fact that what the Russians say and what they've done are two different things is not particularly surprising. The military is not very fast-footed. It's not particularly agile. And the fact that they're still bombarding cities like Chernihiv, and that there have been other explosions around Kyiv and in certainly Kharkiv, also indicates that although they are locating the main thrust of their forces, it seems, to the southeast, they will nevertheless continue to surround the major cities that run along the Ukrainian-Russian border. But I think there's a political dimension here where the Russians will show that they want to leave Kyiv alone, because instead now of trying to eliminate the Ukrainian government, they now know that at some point they will have to negotiate with it. So it makes sense to lessen their pressure on Kyiv, even if they maintain their pressure on the other cities that they presently surround.
What do you think Russia might be trying to achieve in talks with Ukraine?
It's very hard to work out what the Russians really can achieve by negotiation, because they're not in a very strong position at the moment to negotiate. The Ukrainians are in a much better position to negotiate, and the Ukrainians have most of the rest of the world behind them, at least politically. But I think the Russians may come down to a more limited war aim, and will try to negotiate the acceptance of their presence in most or all of the Donbass region, the legitimacy of the Crimea as a part of Russia, which has been seized since 2014 and has been annexed completely illegally. So they might look for the legality of that. They might look for international acceptance of that. And they might try to negotiate to hold on to the land bridge between Donbass and Crimea that they've more or less got. I mean, if Mariupol falls, which is the only city holding up that land bridge, then they would have a stretch of territory between the Donbass and Crimea. They might try to hold on to that too, legally. However, there are about 2 million people in that area, 2 million Ukrainians, who certainly don't want to live under Russian control.
What signs do we have that Putin is at odds with his military leaders? And what do you think this means for Russia and this war?
I mean, Putin gave them an impossible task, which was to seize Ukraine within 72 hours on the completely mistaken assumption that the Ukrainians would not fight back, that the Ukrainians would at least be passive, if not indeed enthusiastic about it. That was totally and utterly wrong. And so Putin's design for this war, and Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff, is the man responsible for that design. Ultimately, it's his responsibility, even if it isn't his fault. But Putin embarked on a completely impossible military strategy, and now he is blaming the military and the security services for not carrying it out or not being successful. So there seems to be a great deal of tension at the top, and I think that's inevitable in this sort of situation.